Young people took to the streets with political muralism all over Chile in the late 60s, at the same time that young people in New York were starting modern graffiti, and May 68 took place in Paris. Chile Estyle is a documentary film which explores the past and present of Chile's unique street art tradition, which comes from a remix of political muralism and graffiti, and has been part of Chilean cultural and political life since the 60s. The result is a visually arresting, informative, and entertaining film. Continuing our Latin American run at the Garden Cinema, we teamed up with Alvarado to show Pablo Aravena's Chile Estyle. The director joined us in person to discuss the making of the film, as well as wider issues around political graffiti, DJing and hip-hop, as well as the UK Latino cultural scene. The discussion was hosted by Alvarado's Pablo Navarrete.
All right, we're on, like Donkey Kong. All right.
Okay, so it's the two Pablos here. Yeah, I love how you put it together. I like the soundtrack and the way you travel around Chile. I guess I'm just going to ask one question. Hopefully we'll just have loads of comments and questions from you guys out there. I guess maybe tell us, you as a documentary filmmaker, you're Chilean, lived in Canada most of your life, now live in London. A little bit about where this film sits in the kind of other films that you've made as a filmmaker.
Okay, my first film is called Next, a primer on urban painting. I made it in 2000, early 2000s, and it came out in 2005, and it played here at the Raindance Film Festival 2006, and then at the Brighton Film Festival that year, Leeds Film Festival, and also at the street art exhibition at the Tate in 2008. And this film was basically a film about the beginning of what we now know as street art around the world. It was the first film that kind of documented how this culture went from New York to the world. So I shot it in over 10 countries, and basically, yeah, captured, the whole Banksy thing and what we now know as street art. I mean, at the beginning, at that time, it was kind of new. Nobody knew about it. There weren't that many books, so it was sort of a groundbreaking film. And I guess I was inspired because, when I was in film school, it was like, make a film. I wanted to make a film when I got out, but it was like, make something about something that you know. So I kind of grew up with hip-hop culture, and I saw this film called Scratch about turntablism. So I was kind of inspired by that film to make a film about street art, which led me to Chile Style because I traveled all over the world, and I had one country in South America, Sao Paulo, it was Brazil. I had a love affair with Sao Paulo, so I had to go there. But I didn't go to Chile, where I was from. I kind of skipped it because I had been gone for a while, and I didn't realize that we had this whole development of hip-hop culture. I mean, as you saw in the film, there was a whole connection with Sao Paulo. And basically, in the mid-'80s, it was basically Chile, Santiago and Sao Paulo, which were the hip-hop capitals of Latin America, with the whole thing. MCing, DJing, graffiti, and rapping. Oh, I already said that. Breakdancing. And I actually was in Chile when Beat Street and breaking came out. And then I moved to Canada. So I was there at the beginning, but then I missed the whole boom. So then in 2006, I was at the Soundfreak Festival with my first film. And I had somebody in the audience say, "Hey, how come Chile's not in it?" And I was like, oh man. Anyway, so I felt a little bit guilty. And also I kind of, since I hadn't been back, I kind of made a connection which was kind of crucial to this film, which was the whole thing with political muralism. Because, I was born in 73. I was born basically 18 days after the coup. So I grew up under the dictatorship. My whole experience was that. And, I didn't really get to experience democracy because I was in Canada. But, there was all this cultural history that had been erased that, we didn't know about. Basically, over time, it all came out. And I was kind of like, oh yeah, these guys were painting, and ladies, men and women, were painting on the street in, the late 60s. So that was sort of the light bulb moment where I was like, okay, because everybody says, oh, street art started in Paris, 68, or in New York and Philadelphia with style writing, which, now is known as graffiti, but we were doing the same thing at the same time. Like Mona said, in this country, really far apart before the internet, with the, ocean and, the mountains, very, it used to take weeks to get a letter, and we were doing the same thing. So I was like, okay, we were basically modern at the same time as Europe and North America. So that was sort of like, okay, and then connecting that with the hip hop movement, which was a bit of blasphemy. When I first started talking about that in Chile, people were like, oh no, they're not connected. No, because of the political thing, and the graffiti guys thought the political thing was whack because, it didn't have style. The political guys thought, oh, well, this is gringo, American shit. So, but, over time, I mean, I started in 2009. I think those two ideas kind of merged together and we realized, okay, one led to the other and we had this history and then, obviously the muralism thing too, right? Because basically it was the Mexicans that came to Paris and went back to Mexico and said, hey, let's paint our own thing, our own indigenous story, and let's tell our story about the revolution. So that influenced, the whole continent. I mean, the Mexican Revolution is huge. So that's another thing. It was this whole kind of art history thing. Same thing with Mata. Because, graffiti and street art are often not looked at as part of art history. And it's true. I mean, it was an art movement that grew up outside of art history. It was made by children in New York and Philadelphia, and now it became an art movement. And now we're part of art history. But I just wanted to make that connection because, it's to basically say this is important, this is valuable, and to me, it's the art movement of the century. It's the impressionism of our time. And my first film, I was basically saying, I'm going to go get the impressionists when they're 25, 30 chilling in the cafe. And I got it. And, they're all like the old, I'm talking the graffiti guys from New York, they're 60. That's young for painters. I mean, this is going to keep on going. And then the other generations, they're going to keep on going. I mean, this will go to, like I said, impressionism of the century. So that's basically was my motivation to make this, to document, because again, it's to value, you have to create books and movies to kind of bring it up. Obviously there's academics now, there's theses, but when I first started documenting street art in late 90s, there wasn't that much information. So basically that's what it was. And also I guess for me, I'm an immigrant, so it was a way for me to go back to Chile a bunch of times and reconnect with my roots. I mean, I thought it was a film about street art, but after I saw the film, it's really a film about identity too. And it's me exploring my identity as a Chilean Canadian and our Chilean identity as well, how we perceive ourselves as these artists put it on the wall. And these artists, I think we're kind of ahead of the game with all these new identities that are coming out and, like women, Native people, all these things that, before when I was growing up weren't there, now they're there, they're loud voices. So, the artists kind of lead the way.
Do we have questions?
Hello, sorry, my English is not so good, like you, but I am Chilean too, and I am watching this documentary with a lot of curiosity because, yes, muralism in Latin America was started under the shelter of socialism and community and these ideas, and it seemed like a graffiti is under the shelter of individualism, like as a shout of people in crowded cities about be individual. How and you told us there's have a kind of they are mergent. Is that happening or is going to happen? Is a new movement? Is a new kind of art? Is now here, or is you think is something for the future? There's still in the fusion, I don't know, moment of these two movements in Latin America for create something new.
I think that it's here. It's called neo-muralism. I mean, I think Inti, and he's kind of the example of that. But I think there's a lot of that, and like he says at the end, it's all over Latin America. It's not just in Chile. I mean, I think that social concern of the mural movement, combined with the style, the technique, spray paint, and sort of the freshness of graffiti, and sort of the "I'm here, yo, what's up," like that New York thing. I think that's there. That's happening. I think there's a lot of artists that are doing that, and I think that reflects Latin America really, because we still have a lot of social problems. There's still a lot of issues, and these voices are necessary. And there's a lot of walls. Like he said, you can ask the lady in the corner and say, "Hey, can I paint your wall?" Because in a sense, you're sprucing the wall up for them. And it's just a different reality. And I think obviously people hate graffiti tags, but there's a lot of figurative work, so people can understand it. I think the whole graffiti tagging thing, that will always endure, and that's sort of the root of it all, right? Like a lot of these artists, they started writing their name, and then they learned to draw from that, and then they start making figurative work. But if they never wrote their name a million times, they would have never learned to draw a hand or a face. And you got to remember that graffiti was basically created by children in New York and Philadelphia that didn't have art class because they cut all the funding. So they started using the alphabet as a basic form to create. And same thing with records and turntables. I don't have instruments. I don't have a saxophone, so I'm going to get a turn. It's basically kids that invented something to express themselves. I mean, this whole movement is, they're basically tools of expression, and that's the thing. Like I guess I explored that with my first film, and then I went back to Chile and saw how we adapted it in a sense. But yes, I think definitely the fusion of the mural and the graffiti movement is there, and I think it's there in all of Latin America. And again, it's because of the social reality. It's it affects people, and I think these artists are aware. They're aware, and I guess that's sort of what I'd like to say with the film is, if you're going to paint on the street, think about what you're going to say, because it is a superpower. Sometimes, in Europe and North America, it's become a bit of advertising. Oh yeah, let's paint over this cool building, and it's a nice mural, a lot of portraits. And I'll be honest with you, I like it, and I think it's great. That I'd rather see a nice mural than not. But at the same time, sometimes it's a bit of just decoration. So it's nice to keep that social kind of thing in your head when you're painting. And I think in this day and age, and sort of what the world is going through presently, I think you got to be, it's your job as an artist to say something, and to talk about the issues of the day and what's bothering you in your society, or your ethnic group, or your sex or your sexual orientation. I think you got to say we're here, and that's important.
Any more questions? Should we try and take two at a time? So yeah, that's one hand, and there, two hands.
Is there any one artist that you worked with that touched you more so than all of the others?
Oh, that's a trick question. Well, I mean, I guess you saw the kind of sort of main characters. I guess Mono is sort of like, this figure of the past that's still, he's like the Yoda of street art. He's, still doing the, on the street with the kids. I've seen him, educating, and he lives very humbly, and, he's sort of like an art star, and, he deserves like a national art prize in Chile. He still hasn't gotten it. And, he's an old communist that still is living his ideals, and I really respect him and what he's done. And I guess Sekis, I like his work because he's sort of I guess the immigrant thing, and having the balls to move from Chile to New York and trying to be an artist, and kind of getting his little space. And then Inti's sort of like the art star. He's really the one that's kind of gone the farthest, and he's just a great painter, and really kind of developing his own work, and figurative. I mean, basically he paints canvases on huge walls. It's amazing what he does. And they're Latin American. They're representing for us. So yeah, I mean, and obviously the other thing that is really important to me is the whole female movement in Chile. Like, I did this film about it around the world, and one of the things that kind of struck me in Chile was how strong the female element was. I'd been to all the scenes, and yeah, I did work on a female element in my first film, but in Chile I just noticed that it was just so strong compared to all the other scenes, and united. It wasn't everybody for their own or fighting against each other. And that was something that I was very impressed, and that's still going on, and that is kind of I think very Chilean.
Hi. I was lucky enough to visit Santiago and Valparaiso recently and look at some of the street art, which is incredible, but there's a slight feeling of uncomfortableness that there's lots of tourists doing tours around there of all the street art, and there's a couple of artists who are very political and reference sort of people taking selfies and Instagrams and just to look pretty pictures. did you find any of that sort of tension that people weren't understanding the real social political messages, and some of the artists might actually feel badly towards some of those tourists who are looking at it, or are they happy that the message is being spread around?
I guess I stopped filming in 2017, so it was before the whole social uprising in Chile. And Valparaiso is kind of a unique thing because, yeah, they have street art tours. But you know, I can't say I was aware that there was that tension per se, and maybe because those tours hadn't started as much. But I understand. I mean, Valparaiso is a bit, you know, anarchist, so some people probably don't like it, and also because, you know, gentrification, right? Some of the hills are getting priced out, and because of the tourism and all that stuff. So I think, you know, the process since I stopped filming till now has probably gotten worse. But I understand that. But that's sort of the nature of the beast. Like, let's look at Shoreditch here, right? It's the same thing. The cool neighborhoods get pioneered by, you know, students and young people and artists that, you know, move in the loft, and then, you know, the designers come in, and then after the, you know, what do you call it, the developers come in, and that's just the process of gentrification that happens, and that's kind of worldwide. Valparaiso, though, will probably take a bit longer to gentrify fully because of just what the nature of the city. But yeah, I think that's what it's due to.
As you mentioned before, Inti's work is truly breathtaking, and I just want to know if there is a dichotomy between becoming an established artist like he does and almost keeping it real, maintaining the street art. Was there any sense of that tension amongst some of the interviewees?
I can't say there was really. I mean, you know, they're all trying to make it, and they're all trying to have a career. And I guess, you know, you can be a hardcore bomber and rack your paint and do all that stuff until you're 30, 40, but at some point, you know, you gotta pay rent and all that stuff. And I think Chile, it's, you know, it's a different socioeconomic reality as well, right? It's not like living in Europe. I don't know, you can maybe kind of survive, I don't know. And it's just an age thing. I mean, you know, you get older, you can't do that anymore. In your 20s maybe, in your early 30s maybe after. But I think, yeah, I don't really think there's that much of a, you know, keeping it real thing. There's definitely been, you know, Nike and brands that are starting to get into it, but not to the extent as here. And, you know, a lot of people just paint on the street, you know, free, and, you know, they get latex paint from the store and they just do it. It's still kind of roots, you know, hasn't been, you know, fully co-opted, and, you know, there's no real art market in Chile per se. Like Inti, you got to go out of the country, New York, Paris, like, you know, the real art market, and try and make it there, or, you know, and I guess the way is to live there because selling work is a bit harder. There's a few galleries, and like, you know, the other guy said, there's commercial work, like Sila said, but, you know, for a lot of them, it's sort of still keeping it real because they have a regular job and do it on the weekend or when they can. And yeah, it's due to the reality, that's all.
Okay, so we have about 10 minutes, so yeah, let's get some questions.
The payment for the giant murals, there are very few in London, and some of those mostly are paid for by things like hotels or brands. But there seem to be so many in Chile of those, the really large murals. What's the sort of commercial basis for those, firstly? And secondly, those, for example, the house in Valparaiso that was painted, the guy was very proud of it. I mean, was that just done free, or was that paid for in some way? Does the state pay for those kind of things in Chile?
The state? No way. No. Actually, there are some municipalities involved. I mean, look, there's outfits now like Galeria Lira and Metro 21. They're basically mural organizations, and they work with state and, you know, private, I guess, organizations, private companies, sponsors. So there's a lot of murals going on in Santiago, and, you know, they'll paint the basketball court, you know. So there's a sort of community revitalizing. There's a mix of all that. That's happening now. That's, I guess, when I was filming, there was Valparaiso en Colores, those kind of, I guess, council estate buildings with the drone shots. That was organized by them. So like NGOs. So there is a network of that. The house was part of the Polanco Graph Festival, which is basically, you know, kind of community organized. There was no commercial involvement. Maybe some of the municipality, perhaps, because they're trying to revitalize that particular hill. But yeah, like there are these organizations now that are doing it, and I mean they do really good work, and they do these really big buildings, and they're providing, you know, jobs for all these artists. I mean, I like to say we have like, you know, sort of like the best football team of muralists, and you know they're getting opportunities. I mean, I think it's great. I mean, I'm an artist. I'm trying to make a living, and so should these painters. And you know, it's not easy. So those murals probably give them a little bit of time, you know, a few months or maybe half a year of, some of them are well paid to, you know, take care of your bills and maybe be able to work in a studio and make some paintings and, you know, maybe have a family, you know, be a normal person. I think artists should get paid and have a normal life. It's a strange concept, but.
There's a couple there.
Hiya, I loved your film, it was really good. I was just wondering how you met the artists and like how you built that network. Did you know any of the artists beforehand, or yeah, how did you introduce yourself to them?
Like I said it earlier, I made films about what I knew. I guess I started in '98 with some friends in Montreal that were called the Heavyweight Crew, and they were doing live painting with DJs, and they were kind of touring with Ninja Tune acts, because Montreal used to be was the North American headquarters for Ninja Tunes. So Roots would come and they would tour with them around North America. So I started filming with that, and then they kind of started meeting a lot of, you know, important graffiti artists in New York. So I guess I kind of got in from the get-go, and you know, since then I'm kind of an embedded journalist. I'm in the thing. I'm like the sociologist that goes and lives in the Amazon and learns the language and takes a wife and, you know, paints her face. I'm part of it. I'm in there. And I've been in there for 20 years. So, you know, when I got to Chile, I knew a few of the artists, had met some of them, but also, you know, I had made Next, so that kind of opened a lot of doors. And yeah, and I mean, that's sort of what I do. I mean, I make films about urban subcultures, and basically I hang out, and that's how I make the films. Same thing with DJ culture. I mean, I've been involved with that, you know, a long time, and I know them internationally. It's all a network, really. Like when I go to Paris, I call my DJ friends and my graffiti or artist friends, and that's how I get connected. So, and it's fun. I mean, it's you know, I'm not trying to be a journalist. I'm not a journalist. I don't believe in objectivity. I got a point I'm trying to make. This is my point of view. And I'm trying to value this culture. I'm trying to value urban culture, street culture, DJ culture, all that, because, you know, sometimes it doesn't get the respect that it should, but it is the art movement with the music. You know, it's sort of like abstract impressionism in the 50s with jazz. It's the same thing, club music and graffiti and street art. They go hand in hand. They reflect our time. It's the zeitgeist. So I'm documenting that.
Hello. Yeah, just following up your answer, I'm just curious on what you want to show next for your next film or documentary.
Well, I'm a new immigrant here in the UK, so I'm trying to talk about that. And, you know, I was just talking about DJ culture, so I wanted to switch, because, you know, one goes with the other, but I've done two about graffiti and street art. Okay, let's go to music now. So I'm making a film called Aquí Estamos, Here We Are. It's basically about the Latinx club scene here in the UK, because I noticed that, you know, Latinos, Latinx people don't exist in the mainstream here. I'm like, where are we? And then, you know, when COVID came, I went and got my shot, and my whole life in Canada, I was brown, you know, I was racialized, and then here, all of a sudden, I had a woman with a hijab, same skin tone as me, told me I was Italian. You're white other. I was like, oh wow, I got to switch in categories. I got upgraded. And then I went and did the census, and there's no Latin American like box for me to tick. They have every other thing in the empire, ex-empire, and I'm other. So I'm just like a German guy or a Swedish person. I'm like in this bunch of people that have all the nations in the UK, all the different African, Southeast Asia, Asian colonies, but nothing for Latin America. So I was like, wait a minute, I'm not on the news. I don't exist on paper. So that kind of bothered me. And then I guess at the same time, DJ Raf, who made the soundtrack, he's also immigrated here in the last, he's been here a couple of years longer than me, but he was getting in the scene. I realized there's this whole kind of movement, like movimientos and época. There's all these parties going on. And basically it's, late 20s, 30-year-old Latino kids, second generation British kids that are basically playing all the diasporic music. Like dembow, reggaeton, cumbiaton, changatuki, baile funk, and basically, making a Latin scene. It's not like the old salsa, this is new, this is electronic, and like everything else in the UK, this is what I love about the UK, is that it's getting mixed and, putting through the blender and, with garage and the whole reggae kind of sound system thing, and it's making something new, and that's what is good here, that things get blended and something new comes out. So I guess I'm making a film about that, and also I guess about what is the British Latino identity of these young kids, 30-year-olds, well, not that young, but young enough, younger than me. And I'm curious about that because I've lived, this is my second immigration experience, so I'm kind of exploring that now. And so it's that's what I'm making a film about. Hopefully I'll get it done in a couple of years, not 12 years like this one. Tell the BBC or Channel 4 or Sky Arts to give me some money, because we're not represented, so help us represent some public funding somewhere, somebody.
This is a bit of a cheeky question, but the mural in Montreal by Mono, I think it was, where is that, if you remember?
Well, there's 3 of them. The big long one is the Lester P. Pearson High School, and that one is in Montreal North.
Yeah, I know where Lester P. is.
Okay. Well, see, I'm an ex-Montrealer too. The other one with the face is in Villeray, I think. And yeah, the other 2 are in Villeray. And then the Inti one is quite central. The Inti one is in Saint Laurent and Prince Arthur, right beside where Eccentrics used to be. Yeah, and it's still there. They never painted over that. And Mural Fest is going on right now as we speak.
So Pablo, before we wrap up, we've got one more.
Hi there, thanks. I thought it was awesome, by the way. You said that so Santiago is obviously the kind of b-boy capital of Chile, and then I've been to Santiago and Valparaiso, and it's obviously they're very different styles. Santiago is more gritty, proper writing, or traditional. Valparaiso is obviously more murals and illustration. Did you find the further you got from Santiago, going north and south, there was less classic writing and more proper mural style, do you think?
That's a hard one. I mean, I like to think of sort of the whole graffiti hip-hop thing in Chile to be quite like orthodox, like they really kept it New York. Like if you hear the beats, it sounds like DJ Premier, which is sort of what I like. I think there's a mix of figurative murals, but the graffiti thing, that goes, it's kind of the root really, and it's hard, it's hardcore. I mean, if there's just tagging everywhere, even in Valparaiso, everything is tagged. I mean, even monuments and murals sometimes a bit too much. I mean, I like it personally because I see it as a whole alternative set of signage. So like when I go to a city, I can, okay, this is happening. I have a whole set of information when I read the tags, and I know this person. I enjoy that, but other people don't. I get it. It's it's a contentious issue, but I guess the only thing I'll say is it's calligraphy. It's not just dirty writing. It's somebody actually spent time developing that signature, and yeah, I mean it's the nature of the beast, right? I mean the whole thing is to do it illegal. you don't want to be doing it legal. That's you know the whole root of it, and it's sort of like I gotta remember it's a kid's game. It's like, look, I got up. I mean, that's what it is. That's where it comes from.
Once again, thank you so much, Pablo, for sharing your film and for coming here to talk. A round of applause for Pablo. How do so your new film, the one in production, Aquí Estamos? Here we are here.
Oh yeah.
How can they follow that?
We have an Instagram, so it's Aquí Estamos Doc with a AQUIESTAMOS Doc. And yeah, next week I'm going to Sheffield to hustle. So if you guys know any, commissioning editors, give me the link. I need the ends.
Give you the link to. Thank you so much for coming out for the Garden Cinema.
Thanks for coming, guys. Really appreciate it.